Welcome to another episode of Anonymous John, where we dive into the shadows and uncover the untold stories. Today, we have a special guest, the creator of Anonymous John. Let's delve into the mind behind the mystery. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, no worries, Sarah. I really appreciate you having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to create Anonymous John?
So I don't think it was really one thing. I think it was numerous things, like just different events that kind of happened over the course of my life. And I've always been involved in media in one form or another, and it's taken me years to kind of develop different skills to kind of come to this point where I feel, comfortable. I've even done, like videos to kind of like express where I was, my physical journey before, stuff like that. But I think like the big turning point this time was when my grandfather passed away.
I am so sorry to hear about your grandfather. It sounded like his passing had a really deep and profound impact on you. How did that event influence your decision to start the podcast? And what message or theme did you want to convey through Anonymous John?
So I think you really have to remember that I didn't originally even think about doing a podcast. It really started with writing in a journal as a way for me to think and to process what was happening in my life and what was happening in my health journey. I needed to get it down. I needed to get it down on a piece of paper. And you can hear it in the first episode I did, where there was this moment where I had a dream that involves my grandfather and kind of my ancestors and stuff like that. And it was kind of a wake-up call, because up to this point, I had been trying to change, but it had been one of those half-hearted changes. And I feel a lot of times the stuff that we're trying to do in life is a process of waking up. And so in November, there was that kind of awakening. And I started sort of working out and started kind of changing how I was doing life in general. And then there was this next moment where I had this dream or vision or whatever else you want to call it. And it was just a next level wake up call. And I was just like, okay, look, I'm going to do something, and I'm going to do it differently this time. And that started really with journaling. I had no intention of sharing my thoughts with anyone. I think I asked my wife maybe a couple times to read something I wrote, or I read it to her. But there was no intention of sharing it. It wasn't until much later that I sat there and I sat there and I took the time to share it with a couple of people, kind of what was in my journal. And their response was, "This is really good." Then I thought, what if I made a podcast out of my journal? And I just knew inherently that most people weren't going to listen to it. But I wanted some way of creating accountability, because that was one of the big things that was always big with losing weight, right? Was that you needed some type of accountability. And I didn't feel like going onto Instagram and doing what most other people were doing and taking pictures, when they take the fat picture and then later on you take the skinny picture. I didn't want to do that. I wanted something different. And I just didn't want my quote unquote fat pictures to be all over the internet for the rest of my life. I wanted something that was a little bit more anonymous, right? And I think that's where the concept of Anonymous John came from. It was that I wanted to be able to share my journey, share my deepest thoughts, and yet still keep some form of anonymity.
That's a deeply personal and inspiring journey. It sounds like the process of journaling combined with your grandfather's passing and the dreams you had really pushed you towards making significant changes in your life. The concept of Anonymous John is quite unique in that it allows you to share your experiences and insight while maintaining that level of privacy, which is not always normal. How has this approach helped you in your personal transformation and in connecting with your audience?
Oh, okay. That's a really good question. It's kind of funny. I think it's actually made me more honest. There have been a lot of people who have listened to the podcast, some that know me, but most of them, have no idea who I am. They don't know what my name is. They don't know where I live. And that ability to be anonymous has led to a level of honesty with myself, I think, and with my audience that I don't know that I would have normally have. They say that if you want to tell your deepest secrets, you tell them to a stranger. And in some ways, this is me telling my story to strangers. There's a lot of people that are listening that, I will never meet, I will never know. And some people will think that that's absolutely crazy to share all these very personal things so publicly. But I think that the more personal it feels, right, the more universal it is sometimes. So even though sometimes I think no one else has felt this way, no one else has done this, no one else, whatever, blah, blah, blah. In truth, those things that feel the most personal are the most universal. They're the things that resonate with the most people. Because most people feel that way. We're not little bubbles in and of ourselves. Other people feel that way. A lot of people have these emotions, the despair, the lack of control. And so being able to share that and not feeling judgment, I think, or maybe not feeling judgment, but not feeling the judgment from myself. Because sometimes I think we judge ourselves and we project that judgment onto other people. So because people don't know who I am, I assume that people aren't judging me. Maybe they are. Maybe I just don't know that, right? But because I don't assume that, I think that I can have a higher level of honesty within myself, which then transfers itself to the audience.
Wow, that's so cool. I just heard you say something that you mentioned that the anonymity of Anonymous John in your podcast has allowed you to be more honest with yourself and your audience. And I thought that was just really cool. Can you share a specific moment or story from your podcast where the honesty has led to maybe a significant revelation or change in your life?
Okay. So I think there was this moment, right? Probably 4 months in. I was sick. I was down. I had really severe sciatica in my back. And I was laying there on the floor, and in my head, that's going through there is what in the world am I going to write about? I need to podcast something. And there was nothing really inspirational. And I realized that this part, the part where I was down, not moving, not being an inspiration, that was actually part of the journey. And I didn't have to hide it. I feel sometimes when you start on a self-improvement journey, regardless of what it is, there's this kind of level of skepticism, and probably rightfully so, from the people that are around you. The people are kind of sitting there hey, I know that you said that you're going to start a new fitness journey, but in their head, they're kind of going, are you going to continue? And I think there's a little bit of a lack, and for most people, I think there's a level of a unawareness of how self-improvement works. When you start walking up a mountain, right? Like you see it 25 miles back, something along those lines. And it looks like a steady incline straight up. But as you start trying to climb a mountain, there's all these small hills and maybe even like small mountains. And maybe there's 3 or 4 mountains in between you and the mountain that initially they look like one mountain from way back there. But now you realize there's like 4 or 5 that you got to climb. And there was this moment where I was sitting there and it was like, oh, this is part of the journey. And that allowed me this like realization or revelation that allowed me to just be, okay, I'm not going to worry because no one knows that I'm doing this. No one's judging me. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to be really honest with everybody, including myself. I didn't have to make up any stories about like, oh yeah, I got up and ran 12 miles. I could just be honest with everybody about where I was and not feel guilty. Right? Because at that moment, I felt guilty. I felt guilty that I couldn't get up and work out. I felt guilty that I couldn't stick to my diet in that moment. But that was where I needed to be. I was getting better and I was still on the journey.
It's almost like you're embracing the struggle and being like that transparent has been a turning point.
Yeah, it's true.
How did the openness affect your relationship with like your listeners and your fans? Or even or your perception of your journey? Did it change how you have like approached like the future and those challenges?
I think it gave me freedom. I don't know if I can really state that enough, and maybe it's just me, right? I am a perfectionist at heart, and that means I am very hard on myself creatively, okay? In everything I do, I'm really hard on myself. And that also means, unfortunately, that I'm hard on other people sometimes too. And I think it changed because I started giving more grace to myself. And I think other people on their journey, it's hard to give grace to other people's journey if you're not being graceful with yourself. The other thing, is that with our listeners, for the most part, we have had almost overwhelmingly supportive listeners. We've had like a few weird people. We've had a few weird like death threats and crap like that. But the overwhelming majority has been incredibly supportive. And that really helped. I'm not saying that the negative stuff didn't challenge me in a way I had not been challenged before, but I feel like a lot of the openness that I have given to my audience has been given back to me.
So speaking about fans, I know you have fans from all over the world. So John, it must feel like so rewarding for you that your journey is like resonating with listeners like around the world.
It's weird.
How does it feel like to get like such heartfelt, inspirational contributions from your fans? And does that like influence you and like your motivation or how you do like your podcast?
Honestly, it just adds a lot of pressure. It puts a lot of pressure on me.
Oh, I completely understand. That has to be like just so much pressure. Knowing that like people are like so deeply moved by your content, I think could either be like really rewarding on like one hand and like so daunting. So how do you manage the pressure and still stay like authentic to your journey and to your voice?
I think I'm still learning how to navigate that. I don't really think I have that figured out, or I really understand how to make it work. It's something that I'm dealing with, just even on an anxiety level. It's something that I'm still figuring out how to deal with.
Yeah, that's completely understandable that you're still learning how to navigate this new territory. Like, especially with the added pressure and anxiety that it brings on your life. Like, it's a process. And I think you're like still acknowledging that and figuring that out, which is, it's still like a very significant step. So I know this is going to be a little bit of a hard question, but like, how do you take care of yourself? Like, both like mentally and emotionally on this journey? I'm really interested to hear how you're doing that. Like, do you have any like advice for others, like in that similar situation of learning how to deal with that kind of pressure, like mentally and emotionally?
That is a really interesting question. So, how am I taking care of myself mentally and emotionally? Sometimes I'm not. Let's get real. Sometimes I'm not. And that's still, that's still part of the journey, right? But I think some of it is like, okay, I am working out and I'm still having those moments of quiet. And that really does help me mentally. And I also think one of the things that really hit me really strong is, especially over the last couple of years, is really figuring out how to take time with what I'm going to call my lifelong friends. People that are the most important in my life. The people that I actually want to show up for my funeral. And the reality is that most of my friends are scattered all over the place. They're in Alaska or Virginia, Dallas, Idaho, other countries. And so we're not in the same place. And yet I have been really making a concerted effort to figure out how to spend time with each one of them individually, whether it's gaming or reading books together, doing the things that we can. Because what I found is that I didn't always have a value for community. And I want these people that are in my inner circle to stay in my inner circle. It really helps me mentally and emotionally to have those people as a sounding board. And I've lost enough people over the years through, bad decisions or apathy, really, that I want to have these connections and these people to fall back on, to connect to be a part of my journey, and that I get to be a part of their journey, that we keep each other grounded. And I think that really does a lot, both for my mental and for my emotional state.
That's such a thoughtful approach. Honestly, that's such a thoughtful approach. Like, I think making connections with lifelong friends and engaging in activities together, like, despite the distance, which is so hard. Like, let's be honest, that is so hard. It sounds like it sounds like you've kind of figured it out and you've kind of like grounded yourself. It's great to hear that you've like found that support for your mental and emotional well-being through community, through maybe meditation, maybe like quiet moments.
Some quiet moments, definitely swimming is, one of my big things. But, there is, I just did an episode called Meditation in Motion, which kind of goes over a little bit of that.
This is so cool to listen to. Like, honestly, it's refreshing, like genuinely refreshing. It's so like clear when I'm listening to you that there's like so much authenticity, and it's like a cornerstone of your podcast. So the thing that's going through my head is like, how do you navigate this path? What are you learning about yourself that you didn't expect when you first started your podcast?
Okay, so that's really not the easiest question, but I think it may sound really cliche, but I didn't realize that I would enjoy sharing this journey as much as I have. There's a certain level of release, I think, when it comes down to like writing stuff down. It kind of like pulls it out of you, pulls it out of your system. And there's like a weight that comes off my shoulders. And then there are just certain episodes that bring out more than others. I don't know if you want me to kind of go into more detail about that or not.
Oh, that's not cliche at all. It's quite profound. The act of sharing and the relief that it brings, I think like this is a powerful experience, like even in my life. John, would you be willing to share some more about like specific episodes that were particularly significant for you? Like what made those episodes stand out and what impact did they have on you?
Okay, so there's this episode in season 2. It came out maybe a couple months ago, a couple weeks ago. I can't really remember anymore. And it was all about me dealing with my own inner demons, my own inner voice that, that doesn't like me. And I decided to call him Bob, right? And Bob represented my insecurity. So I decided to personify basically my insecurity as a character. And that really, really stretched me out. Both in that the personification of the character really made me come face to face with certain lies and insecurities I told myself, even now, because it's not like I have completely beaten that demon, but then also trying to voice that character myself. I almost wanted to go like hire an actor, honestly, and have them do, the New Jersey accent, because I don't particularly do a good New Jersey accent. And so it was terrifying to me to have to put that out. It really shook me up because I was like, is this corny? Is this stupid? It was kind of reaching into a different level of my creativity to be able to express my struggle. And that was really hard, but very impactful for me.
So I remember hearing that episode and I remember thinking like, it was like such a leap forward in like how you've done like your podcast, like both like creatively and personally, like, and it's so understandable that sharing something so vulnerable would like be so nerve-wracking. Like I couldn't do it personally. So as we all know, doing a podcast is a very long-term thing. So I'm really wondering, as you've made your podcast, like what aspects of your journey do you find like the most rewarding? What keeps you coming back? And what, kind of rewards do you think will kind of like evolve to keep you kind of motivated going forward?
I mean, this whole thing is part of my weight loss journey, right? So at the end of the day, it is one of the most rewarding things to see inside myself, like dropping the weight. And sometimes it's, just moving up one belt notch, right? Or I think another reward is being able to go on a walk and not feeling like I'm going to die. That's huge. And so I've been able to do these small daily tasks and not feel like they're huge things. Oh, I'm going to go get groceries out of the car for my wife, and I'm not feeling like I'm going to have a heart attack anymore. I'm not saying that I really want to go on a 1 mile walk. I'm still 500 pounds, but I can go on a mile walk and not feel like my chest is going to explode. I'm not going to feel like I need to rest for the rest of the day or that I couldn't breathe. I have more stamina now. And I think those things are some of the most rewarding things that sometimes they move the slowest, and they're the slowest to grow because they happen so gradually over time. But that's the thing that I feel like it's the most rewarding, because again, it's inches over days. Every day is an inch forward. Even if you move back, you move forward. So long as you understand why you moved back, it's okay that it's okay. Like you're still moving forward. Maybe your weight goal went backwards, right? Or your physical goal, but you're moving forward mentally and spiritually, which is what's going to lead you physically. There's forward momentum so that even when you backslide, you're still learning. And I think that learning process to me is the most rewarding thing.
Oh, I love hearing that. I really love it because I know like those small little incremental changes have such a significant impact on your daily life and overall like well-being in general. Like the journey of like self-improvement, I think can be so slow, but those like subtle little victories, they add up over time. Do you like reflect on like those gradual kind of like transformations and stuff? Like as you reflect on that, what advice would you give to someone who's at the beginning of their own weight loss journey or maybe like even self-improvement journey?
Just to go easy on yourself. You know, you didn't get here overnight. You're not going to get out overnight. If I had a magic wand, I think I would instill hope. Because I think looking back, there was this point where I had lost all hope. Hope in living, hope in being, hope in surviving. I'd lost all of it. And I needed hope. We need hope to survive. And I needed to know that there was a chance for a better day, that it was okay, and that I couldn't visualize it. People like, visualize your perfect body. And I couldn't visualize it. It wasn't there. And it's so hard, right? I've been heavy for years and I couldn't visualize being lighter, being more fit. I couldn't visualize it. I couldn't see it because it had been so long since I had seen it, since I had felt it. So the thing that I would try to tell people is I want you to have hope. If there's hope for a guy that got to 600 pounds to start losing weight, there's hope for you. And there's tons of amazing weight loss advice out there. And I don't want to be another one of those people that's trying to give someone advice on what to do or how to start their weight loss journey or maybe their self-improvement journey. I want you to experience that journey for yourself and to find that motivation within yourself, because only internal motivation is what will actually keep you going. All the external motivation, all the P90X and all the powerful speeches didn't do it. It was only when I started having a spark of motivation within myself, that's when I could say that there's really hope.
It's crazy. Like I am sitting here and I can feel that's like such heartfelt like advice. So John, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story, being so vulnerable, and coming in and giving these insights to us today.
Well, and Sarah, I just appreciate you coming in, interviewing me, and taking that time out of your schedule. It really meant a lot.
Well, it was a pleasure interviewing you, and your honesty and insights will undoubtedly resonate with your listeners. So keep sharing your journey, John. And I am sure that Anonymous John will continue to inspire so many people. Guys, make sure to listen every week for new episodes of Anonymous John. You can look it up on the web, theanonymousjohn.com. Thank you so much.
See you guys again soon.